Cowboy had been looking for a wet nurse for his baby for 6 months. Apache woman, now I am here. The cowboy woke up before sunrise, as he did every day. The land around his small wooden cabin was quiet, too quiet for a place that once felt full of life. The wind moved slowly through the dry grass, and the sky showed a pale orange color near the horizon. Inside the cabin, a baby began to cry. The sound was weak but sharp enough to cut through the silence. The cowboy stood up quickly, his body already tired even before the day had begun. He walked toward the small cradle he had made with his own hands. The baby lay there, small and thin, moving his tiny arms. The cowboy gently lifted the child and held him close to his chest. He tried to calm him, softly speaking words that came from his heart, though he was never sure if they helped. 6 months had passed since the day his wife died. That day lived inside him like a shadow that never left. She had been strong through most of her life, but childbirth on the frontier was dangerous. There was no doctor nearby, no proper help, only hope and prayer. When the baby was born, she smiled once, touched the child's face, and then her strength faded away. By nightfall, she was gone. The cowboy buried her near the old oak tree behind the cabin. Every morning he looked at that place before starting his day. He spoke to her in his thoughts, telling her about the baby, promising that he would protect their child no matter what it took. But promises were easier to make than to keep. Feeding the baby had become the hardest battle of his life. He tried everything he could think of. At first, neighbors helped when they could, sharing small amounts of milk. But frontier life was cruel, and no one had much to spare. Over time, visits became fewer. Some people moved away, others faced their own struggles and could not help anymore. The baby grew weaker with each passing week. His cries became softer, and his body felt lighter in the cowboy's arms. Every time the baby slept, the cowboy feared he might not wake up again. Sleep became the cowboy's enemy. Even at night, he stayed alert, listening to every breath. After months of trying to survive alone, the cowboy made a decision. He could not stay in one place anymore. If help would not come to him, he would go and look for it. He packed what little he owned, tied supplies to his horse, and held the baby close as they rode from place to place. The search was long and painful. He visited ranches where families lived behind fences and locked doors. Some people listened to his story with sad eyes but shook their heads. Others did not even open the door fully. A few looked at the baby with pity, but turned away, afraid of the burden. He spoke to shopkeepers, travelers, and farmers. Each rejection felt heavier than the last. Some nights he slept outside town, holding the baby under the stars, whispering apologies for not being able to give him what he needed. The land itself seemed to test him. Psh, 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 psh. Burned his skin during the day, and cold winds cut through his clothes at night. Food was often scarce. His horse grew thin, just like the baby. Still, the cowboy kept moving forward, driven by a fear greater than hunger or exhaustion, the fear of losing his child. People often told him the same thing. 6 months is too long, they said. You should have found help by now. Those words hurt more than they knew. The cowboy blamed himself every day. He wondered if he had failed as a husband and now as a father. At times, memories of his wife gave him strength. He remembered her laughter, her calm voice, and the way she believed in kindness, even in a hard world. She had always said that people were not as different as they seemed. He held on to that thought when hope felt distant. As weeks passed, the baby's condition worried him more. His skin felt cool too often, and his eyes did not open as wide as before. The cowboy spoke to the baby constantly, telling him stories of wide plains and strong horses, promising him a future where he would run free and happy. He did not know if the baby understood, but he needed to believe the words meant something. One evening, the cowboy reached the edge of a wide open land near a river. Tall trees stood along the water, and the air felt different there. Calmer, somehow. He decided to rest for the night. He made a small fire and wrapped the baby in a blanket, holding him close to keep him warm. As the fire crackled, the cowboy stared into the flames. His thoughts were heavy breaths. 6 months of searching had brought him nothing but tired feet and broken hope. For the first time, a dark thought entered his mind, the idea that maybe he could not win this fight. He pushed the thought away quickly. He looked down at the baby's face and felt a deep pain in his chest. Giving up was not an option. Even if the world refused to help him, he would keep trying. The night grew quiet, but the cowboy felt uneasy. He sensed that he was not completely alone. The frontier was full of unseen eyes, and stories of danger were common. He pulled the baby closer and kept his hand near his rifle, not out of anger, but out of fear. Breaths. Still, beneath the fear there was something else, a feeling that change was near. The land around him felt alive, as if it was waiting. He did not know it yet, but this night by the river was the end of one long struggle and the beginning of something he never expected. As the fire slowly died down and the baby slept in his arms, the cowboy whispered one last promise into the night. He would protect his child, no matter who came into his life, or from where help might arrive. Breaths. Hope was fragile, but it was still alive, and he held on to it with everything he had. Morning came slowly by the river. A thin layer of fog rested over the water, moving gently as if the land itself was breathing. The cowboy had not slept much. He sat against a tree, the baby wrapped tightly in his arms. When the baby stirred, he felt both relief and fear. Relief that the child was still alive, fear the time was running out. He stood up carefully and looked around. The area felt peaceful, yet strange. Birds watched from the trees, and the river moved quietly. Still, the cowboy felt that unseen eyes were near. Frontier life had taught him to trust his instincts. He did not feel danger, but he did feel presence. He fed the baby what little he had, knowing it was not enough. The baby's lips moved weakly, and the cowboy's heart tightened. He brushed the child's cheek with his finger and whispered soft words, telling him that today would be better. He did not know if that was true, but saying it helped him keep moving. As the sun rose higher, the fog slowly disappeared. The cowboy packed his things and decided to follow the river for a while. Water meant life, and life meant hope. His horse walked slowly, tired from long travel, but still loyal. Every few steps, the cowboy checked on the baby, watching his small chest rise and fall. As they moved along the river, the cowboy noticed signs he could not ignore. Broken branches, footprints near the water, and places where the grass was pressed down. He stopped his horse and studied the ground. These were not animal tracks. Someone had been here recently. Fear crept into his chest. Stories he had heard since childhood came rushing back. Stories filled with misunderstanding and fear of people who lived beyond the towns and ranches. He had been raised to believe those people were dangerous, yet as he looked at the tracks, he did not feel anger. He felt worry, mixed with something close to curiosity. He continued forward, more alert now. His hand rested near his rifle, not because he wanted to use it, but because he felt responsible for the small life in his arms. The baby slept again, unaware of the world's dangers. That innocence gave the cowboy strength. Around midday, the cowboy stopped near a group of trees to rest. The sun was strong, and the baby needed shade. He tied the horse and sat on the ground, his back against a tree. Psst. As he rested, memories filled his mind. He remembered his wife's voice clearly in moments like this. Psst. She had never liked how people spoke with fear about others. She believed that pain and love were shared by all humans, no matter where they came from. At the time, he had not fully understood her words. Now, alone with a child who needed help, those words felt more important than ever. The baby woke and cried softly. The cowboy rocked him gently, humming a simple tune his wife used to sing. His voice was rough, but the baby seemed to calm a little. Still, the cowboy could feel how light the child was. Date without proper care made the future darker. As afternoon came, the sense of being watched returned. This time it was stronger. The cowboy looked around slowly. He did not see anyone, but he knew he was not alone. The trees were too quiet, and the birds had stopped singing. He stood up slowly, careful not to scare anyone who might be nearby. He did not shout or call out. Right. Instead, he spoke calmly into the open space, saying that he meant no harm. His voice echoed softly and then disappeared. Nothing happened. Minutes passed. The cowboy remained still. Sweat rolled down his face, not only from the heat but from tension. His thoughts raced. If someone wanted to hurt him, they would have acted already. That thought brought a strange sense of comfort. He sat back down, though he stayed alert. The baby rested against his chest, breathing shallow but steady. The cowboy focused on that sound, letting it guide him. Later in the afternoon, he noticed movement near the edge of the trees. It was quick, almost hidden, but real. His heart began to pound. He slowly stood again, careful with every movement. A figure appeared for just a moment and then disappeared. The cowboy swallowed hard. Grace, he did not raise his rifle. Something inside him stopped him. Fear was there, but it was mixed with a deep need for understanding. As evening approached, the cowboy decided not to move anymore. Running would only make things worse. He stayed by the river, making a small fire as the sun lowered, pushed back the growing darkness, but not his thoughts. He felt small under the wide sky. Desp. 6 months of struggle had worn him down. He wondered if this place by the river was where his journey would end. Not because of violence, but because of time. The baby needed help soon. The night sound slowly returned. Crickets chirped, and the river continued its steady flow. The cowboy held the baby close, whispering quiet words of comfort. His eyes stayed open, watching the shadows move. At some point, he noticed a shape on the other side of the firelight. Someone was there, standing just beyond the reach of the flames. The cowboy's breath caught in his throat. He did not move. The figure remained still. There was no threat in the posture, no sudden movement, just quiet observation. The cowboy felt a strange calm settle over him. He realized that whoever this was, they had been watching for a long time and had chosen not to act with harm. He spoke again, this time more softly. He talked about the baby. He explained that he was alone, that his child was weak, and that he was only trying to survive. He did not know why he was sharing this, but the words flowed out naturally. The figure did not respond, but did not leave either. The fire crackled between them. The cowboy stared into the flames, waiting. His heart felt open and exposed. yet lighter than it had in months. For the first time in a long while, he felt that someone might truly see him. The baby shifted in his arms and let out a small sound. The cowboy looked down quickly, then back up. When he looked again, the figure had moved closer, still staying in the shadows. The cowboy did not know it yet, but this quiet night marked a turning point. The fear he had carried for so long was slowly being replaced by something else. Pretense yet, but the beginning of it. As the fire burned lower, the cowboy stayed where he was, holding onto the baby and to a fragile hope. Brant. Whatever tomorrow would bring, he sensed it would not be the same as the days before. The long search was changing, and the river, the land, and the silent watcher were all part of that change. Inspiration. The fire had burned low, turning into soft red embers that gave just enough light to see shapes and shadows. The cowboy had not moved for a long time. His body was stiff, but his arms stayed gentle around the baby. The night air felt cool, and the river nearby moved with a steady, calming sound. From the edge of the darkness, the figure finally stepped forward. The firelight touched her face, and the cowboy could see she was a woman. She moved slowly, with calm steps, showing no sign of fear or hurry. Her eyes were steady, and her face showed neither anger nor threat. The cowboy stood up carefully, keeping one arm around the baby. His other hand stayed away from his rifle. He did not want to show fear or force. His heart was beating fast, but something inside him told him to stay calm. The woman stopped a few steps away. She looked first at the cowboy, then at the baby in his arms. Her eyes softened when she saw the child. She seemed to understand everything without needing many words. The silence between them was deep. Only the river and the night sounds filled the space. Then she spoke. Now I am here. Her voice was quiet but strong. The words were simple, yet they carried a weight that the cowboy felt deep in his chest. But he did not fully understand why, but those words felt like an answer to months of fear and prayer. The cowboy swallowed hard. He did not know what to say at first. He nodded slowly, unsure if his voice would work. When he finally spoke, his words came out rough and tired. My baby. He needs help, he said. I've been looking for months. The woman did not reply right away. She stepped closer, careful and respectful. She looked at the baby again, noticing his small size and weak movements. She reached out slightly, then paused, waiting.
The cowboy understood the question without it being asked.
Breath. He nodded again and adjusted the blanket so she could see the child better. The baby made a small sound, barely louder than a breath. The woman's face showed sadness, but also determination. She knelt near the fire, keeping a safe distance, and rested her hands on her knees. She spoke again, slowly. You stayed. You did not run. The cowboy listened carefully, but he realized she was speaking not only about tonight, but about trust. He answered honestly. I didn't know where else to go, he said. Running hasn't helped me. She nodded, as if those words confirmed something in her mind. The woman explained in simple language that she belonged to a group that lived not far from the river. She had seen him the day before and noticed the baby. But to understand, life had taught her to be careful too. The cowboy felt a strange mix of emotions. Fear was still there, but it was slowly fading, replaced by relief. For the first time in a long while, someone had stayed to listen. The woman asked if the baby had a mother. The cowboy lowered his eyes and shook his head. He told her about his wife, about the cabin, about the long months of searching. He did not hide his failure or his pain. Desperation. She did not interrupt. When he finished, she remained silent for a moment, then reached out and gently touched the baby's hand. Birth. The baby's fingers moved slightly, holding onto one of hers. The cowboy's breath caught in his throat. The woman looked up at him and spoke softly. She said she was a mother too, and that she understood hunger and loss. She said the land had taken many things from her people, but it had also taught them how to survive. Then she repeated the words again, slower this time. Now I am here! Those words broke something inside the cowboy. His eyes filled, though he tried to hide it. He had carried his pain alone for so long that kindness felt almost unreal. The woman explained what she could do and what she could not. Breath. She spoke with honesty, not promise. She said the baby was weak, but not beyond hope. Air, warmth, and time were needed. She said she would stay nearby for a while, as long as the cowboy accepted her help. The decision felt heavy, but also clear. The cowboy nodded. He thanked her, his voice shaking.
He knew trust went both ways, and he was ready to take that step.
The woman moved closer to the fire and helped make it stronger. She showed the cowboy how to keep the baby warm through the night. Her movements were gentle and sure, guided by experience. The night passed slowly. The baby rested more peacefully than he had in days. The cowboy stayed awake, watching every movement, afraid that if he closed his eyes, everything might disappear like a dream. As the sky began to lighten, the woman prepared to leave for a short time. She explained she would return with things that could help. Before she stepped back into the trees, she looked at the cowboy and the baby one more time. You did not turn away, she said. That matters. When she disappeared into the forest, the cowboy sat quietly by the fire. The fear that had ruled his life for months felt lighter now. He did not know what the future held, but for the first time he felt he was not facing it alone. The baby stirred in his arms and opened his eyes, slightly. The cowboy smiled, a small and tired smile, but a real one. He whispered softly to the child, telling him that help had come, that things might change. As the sun rose over the river, the cowboy felt something he had almost forgotten. Hope. It was fragile, like the baby in his arms, but it was alive. Breath. And this time it felt real. He sat there, waiting, trusting that the woman's words were true. The long search that had begun with pain and loss had finally led him to this quiet moment by the river, where fear met kindness and began to fade. And deep in his heart, the cowboy knew that nothing would ever be the same again. The woman returned before the sun climbed too high. The cowboy noticed her coming from the trees, walking calmly, as if the land itself guided her steps. She carried a small bundle made of cloth and leaves. When she reached the fire, she nodded once, a quiet greeting. The baby stirred in the cowboy's arms, and for the first time in many days, his cry sounded a little stronger. The woman knelt down and opened her bundle. Inside were simple things, but to the cowboy they looked like treasures: clean cloth, dried herbs, and small tools made from bone and wood. She explained each thing slowly, using simple words, making sure he understood. Her voice was steady and patient. She first checked the baby carefully. Her hands were warm and gentle. She listened to his breathing, watched his small movements, and touched his forehead. The cowboy held his breath, watching her face for any sign of worry. She nodded slightly and said the baby was weak but still fighting. That answer alone lifted a heavy weight from the cowboy's heart. The woman stayed close that day. Wrath. She showed him how to keep the baby wrapped properly, how to protect him from the wind, and how to make a small shelter using branches and cloth. Every action had purpose. Every movement showed experience. The cowboy watched closely, learning with full attention. He asked questions when he did not understand. She answered without judgment. There was no feeling of one being above the other. They were simply two people trying to protect a child. As the hours passed, the baby rested more peacefully. His breathing became steadier. The cowboy noticed small changes that felt like miracles. The baby's hands moved more, his eyes opened longer. Each tiny improvement filled the cowboy with quiet joy. They spoke little, but when they did, their words mattered. The woman spoke about the land and how it gave signs to those who listened. She spoke about patience and how healing could not be rushed. The cowboy shared stories of his cabin, his wife, and the dreams they once had. Speaking her name out loud still hurt, but it also felt right. As evening came, the woman suggested moving to a safer spot nearby, a place where the wind was softer and the ground more even. The cowboy agreed. Together they moved slowly, careful not to disturb the baby. Working side by side felt strange at first, but soon it felt natural. That night, the fire burned brighter. The woman stayed, sitting across from the cowboy. The space between them felt smaller now, not because of distance, but because of trust. The cowboy no longer felt the need to keep his hand near his rifle. He felt protected, not threatened. The baby slept for longer stretches. The cowboy finally allowed himself to rest, though lightly. When he woke, the woman was still there, watching the fire, listening to the night. Days passed like this. The woman came and went, sometimes staying, sometimes leaving to gather what was needed. Each time she returned, the baby seemed a little stronger. The cowboy began to smile more. His eyes no longer looked hollow. Hope was slowly filling the space where fear had lived.
The woman taught him how to read signs of health and weakness.
She showed him how to respond calmly instead of with panic. The cowboy realized how much fear had controlled him before. Now, with guidance, he felt steadier. They began to talk more openly. The cowboy asked about her life, her people, and the ways she had learned. She shared stories of long journeys, of losses, and of strength passed down through generations, perhaps. She spoke of family not only as blood, but as responsibility. One afternoon, as the baby rested against the cowboy's chest, the woman said something that stayed with him. She said that sometimes help comes from places we are taught to fear, and sometimes fear only exists because people stop listening. The cowboy thought about his past, about the stories he had heard growing up, about how those stories had almost stopped him from trusting the very person who saved his child. The realization was heavy, but also freeing. As the baby grew stronger, the woman encouraged the cowboy to take more responsibility, guiding instead of leading. She wanted him to learn, not depend fully. He respected that. He practiced every lesson with care. One evening, the baby let out a soft sound that almost sounded like a laugh. The cowboy froze, then laughed quietly himself. Tears filled his eyes, but this time they were not from pain. The woman watched, a small smile on her face. "You see?" she said softly. "Life is still here."
The cowboy nodded, unable to speak. As days turned into more days, the woman spoke about leaving soon.
Not forever, she explained, but to return to her people. The baby was improving, and the cowboy was learning well. The thought of her leaving filled him with both gratitude and fear. On her last evening by the fire, the cowboy thanked her properly. He told her that she had saved his child and changed his heart. He told her that he would never forget what she had done. She listened quietly and then said something simple. She said that helping a child was never a burden. It was a duty shared by all humans. That night, the cowboy held his baby and watched the fire burn low. He felt stronger now, not because life had become easy, but because he was no longer alone in his understanding. The world was larger and kinder than he had believed. When morning came, the woman prepared to leave. She checked the baby one last time, then stood and looked at the cowboy. "You know what to do now," she said. He nodded. He did. As she walked toward the trees, the cowboy felt sadness but also peace. He held his baby close and watched her disappear into the land. The journey ahead was still hard, but it no longer felt impossible. The cowboy looked down at his child, who slept peacefully against his chest. He whispered a promise, not just to protect him, but to raise him with open eyes and an open heart. The river flowed beside them, steady and calm. Life moved forward, and this time the cowboy was ready. The morning felt different. The air was calm, and the sky looked wider than it ever had before. The cowboy stood near the river, holding his baby close. The child slept peacefully, his breathing steady and warm against the cowboy's chest. It was a sound the cowboy no longer feared. Instead, it filled him with quiet confidence. The woman had left the day before, but her presence still felt close. Not in a way that made the cowboy feel lonely, but in a way that made him feel guided.
Her lessons stayed with him in every movement he made. The way he wrapped the baby.
The way he checked his breathing. The way he stayed calm instead of letting fear take control. The baby opened his eyes slowly and looked up at him. His eyes were clearer now, more alert. The cowboy smiled, a full smile that reached deep into his tired face. He gently touched the baby's hand, and the baby's fingers closed around his thumb with surprising strength. That simple grip told the cowboy everything he needed to know. They stayed by the river for a few more days. The cowboy did not rush to leave. He remembered what the woman had said about patience. Healing took time, and rushing only caused harm. Each day the baby grew a little stronger. His cries became louder, his movements more sure. The cowboy talked to him constantly. He told him about his mother, about the cabin near the oak tree, about the wide plains and open skies. He spoke about kindness and strength, even though the baby could not yet understand the words. The cowboy believed the feelings behind them mattered. As the days passed, the cowboy began to plan. He knew he could not stay by the river forever. But the baby would need more care as he grew. But now, for the first time, he felt ready. When the time came to leave, the cowboy packed slowly and carefully. He checked everything twice. He adjusted the saddle so the baby would be safe and comfortable. He looked around the river one last time, grateful for what this place had given him. Before riding away, he paused and looked toward the trees where the woman had disappeared. He did not speak out loud, but in his heart he said thank you. Not just for saving his child, but for changing the way he saw the world. The journey back was not easy, but it felt different now. The cowboy walked with confidence instead of desperation. When he met people along the way, he spoke with honesty. He no longer hid his fear or his hope. In a small settlement, he found people willing to help. About to, not out of pity but out of respect. They saw the strength in his eyes and the care in his actions. The baby, wrapped warmly and breathing well, was proof that things were changing. Eventually, the cowboy returned to his cabin near the oak tree, but it was home. He cleaned the space, repaired what he could, and made it safe for the baby. Each small task felt meaningful now. At night he sat near the fire with his child in his arms, just as he had by the river. But now the silence felt peaceful instead of heavy. He still missed his wife deeply. That pain never fully left, but it no longer controlled him. He spoke to her often, telling her how strong their child was becoming. He told her about the woman by the river and how kindness had come from an unexpected place. He believed, somehow, that his wife would have understood.
As weeks turned into months, the baby grew healthier.
His face filled out, his eyes shone brighter, and his laughter became a sound that filled the cabin with life. The cowboy worked hard during the day, but he always returned home with gratitude. He raised his child with the lessons he had learned. He taught him respect for the land and for people. He taught him that fear should never stop kindness, and that help could come from anywhere. Sometimes the cowboy thought about the woman and wondered how she was. He hoped her life was peaceful. He hoped she knew that her actions had changed more than one life. They had changed a way of thinking, a future. Years later, when the child was old enough to walk and ask questions, the cowboy told him the story. He told it simply, without anger or fear. He spoke of loss, but also of hope. He spoke of a time when he was lost, and how someone had stepped out of the shadows and said, "Now I am here." The child listened carefully, his eyes wide with wonder. The cowboy knew that one day his child would walk his own path, but he hoped that when the time came, his child would remember this story, not as a tale of danger, but as a lesson in trust and humanity. The frontier remained a hard place. Life was never perfect, but the cowboy no longer felt alone in it. He had learned that strength was not only about standing firm, but also about opening one's heart. As the sun set behind the hills, the cowboy stood outside his cabin, his child beside him. They watched the sky change colors, just as he had done so many times before. But now, instead of fear and loss, his heart was filled with peace. The long search that began with desperation had ended with understanding. And though the journey had changed him forever, it had also given him something greater than survival. It had given him hope, carried forward into the next generation.